And the Quad City Steamwheelers are going to host the Eastern Conference Final.
Hey everyone, welcome back to In the Alley. My name is Cody. Glad you guys are back for another video. Team number 9 on our team preview series as we just start clicking them off. Quad City. Now, I do want to say this is the team I root for. This is the team I root for. But I am not going to try and let my biases get into the way. I know in other previews and stuff like that, I joke about Quad City and, you know, they're going to be 16-0 and win the title and stuff like that. And no, simple as that. So I will take as much bias out of this as I can, even though they will go 16-0 and win a title. But for all intents and purposes, 2025, a really, really good season. One of the best seasons that Quad City has had since they've come back as a team, all the way back from the dead when they were part of the CIF for, a year or two? Before the transition over here to the Indoor Football League. So losing in the Eastern Conference Championship, trying to get back to the Indoor Football League National Championship. They've got some players to do that. This could be an all-in season. Hint, hint, foreshadowing towards those questions. First and foremost, though, we do need to talk about the Steamwheelers from last year. What changes and everything that has stayed the same from last season to this season. Obviously, we need to talk about their schedule, their roster, the departures, the signings, anything and everything in between when it comes to Quad City, just like we have with the 8 other teams that we've done and the 5 other teams that we have left. So let's go dive in to the Quad City Steamwheelers. Okay, so team info popping up here. Quad City Steamwheelers. The Quad City Steamwheelers play in the Quad Cities. It's Moline, East Moline, Bettendorf, and Davenport, Iowa, and Illinois. If you didn't know that, now you know the Quad Cities. They play a vibrant arena at the Mark. I didn't have enough space to write all of that, and I'm not going to do the voice because I've had a sore throat for the last 4 days, so that sucks. But they do play in Moline, Illinois at Vibrant Arena at the Mark. Quick facts about the Steamwheelers. Head coach is Corey Ross, entering his 9th season, and there's been a little bit of weirdness because Quad City was dormant for a minute, and he did go over to Bismarck, if I'm not mistaken, before coming back and taking the helm back for Quad City with all the COVID stuff from 2020 to 2021. We'll talk about that here in 1 second in those 5 years, but entering his 9th season, so I didn't know whether or not to put an asterisk, what have you, but he's still here. 2025 record last season, 11-5, going at 10-5 in the Eastern Conference, and in the last 5 seasons, 36-28. And it's crazy to think that Quad City has a winning record, considering most of these seasons they've gone 500 or just a little bit over, but they are 8 games over 500, which some teams are not over 500, which is kind of crazy to think about, but going over the last 5 seasons, 11-5, losing in the Eastern Conference Championship last year. 2024 going 8-8, losing in the first round. 8-8 again in 2023, losing in the first round. And in 2022 going 9-7, making it all the way to the Indoor Football League National Championship. We don't talk about it, but they did lose to Northern Arizona, giving them their title. 2021, they were dormant, so all the restrictions and stuff like that, they felt it was best not to play the season as they wanted butts and seats, and they didn't know if they were going to provide that or what Illinois was going to do, blah, blah, blah. It's all politics and local politics and what have you. So that was 4 or 5 years ago, what have you. You talk about 2026 now. Well, in a second, we got to talk 2025 stats. Points per game for the Steamwheelers last year, 46.9, which is actually one of the higher stats, like one of the higher points per game in the Indoor Football League. They weren't necessarily scoring at will, but they could easily chuck it deep when they needed to, or they could take off for a huge run. That's just kind of where you have it. Almost 47 points per game. They're putting up almost 7 touchdowns per game. Total offense, 223 total yards, including 130 through the air and 92.8 on the ground. So overall, excuse me, told you, sore throat. Overall, rushing yards per game, they actually had one of the higher ones through the season, almost 100 rushing yards, a very, very balanced attack. You did not know if they were going to run it, if they were going to throw it. DeQuan Neal kind of playing out of his mind at times, and even the running game with Jared Ware and, jet sweeps and stuff like that, whether it's to Jordan Vesey or Deion McShane or whoever they get to run, kind of your motion jet sweeps or, little pop passes, what have you. So 130 passing yards per game. Again, sometimes they would just chuck it deep. Jordan Vesey being your deep threat. And again, I think there was one game where Deion McShane had like 4 touchdowns early on in the season before he ended up getting hurt. So they were able to play some YOLO ball, just someone's down there. Third down conversions, though, this is kind of the tale of what I wouldn't say doomed Quad City, but they were not that good on third down. 38 of 106 for 35.8. They did not really convert third downs. But when they got into fourth down conversions, and we'll talk about special teams and stuff like that here in a sec, 12 of 28 for 43, 42.9, 43%. They were actually able to kind of convert a little bit on fourth downs. So for all intents and purposes, if they didn't convert third down, they were converting fourth downs, or we'll talk about special teams, they were kicking field goals. Simple as that. We'll talk about that in 1 second. Red zone percentage, 63 of 78, 80.8%. So not the best, not the worst. When they got into the red zone, 80% of the time they were punching it in. So 8 out of every 10 red zone trips, they scored. Defensive stats, 42.8 points per game. Not great. Not the worst. Not great. So you see points per game for them offensively and defensively roughly even. So what they were scoring, they were getting into some of these track meets. Total offense allowed per game, 247. So they were actually giving up more yards than they were gaining in most games. And if I'm not mistaken, at certain points throughout the season, Quad City actually had one of the worst pass defenses in the league. Passing yards allowed 162.3 yards per game. And again, we're taking IFL statistics into question here, where the statistics last year, they were shoddy at best. So grain of salt. I know I'm not trying to, take away from what Quad City allowed or didn't, but you do it for all of these previews. So 162, that's not good. And they were giving up 85.3 rushing yards per game. Again, almost 250 yards per game given up. The defense was really bend but kind of break. Not bend but don't break, but bend but kind of break. Difference, though, is they were able to take the ball away quite a bit. 29 total takeaways, which, looking at the stats, was one of the highest in the league. Not the highest, but roughly top 5. This is another thing that got them in trouble as well, but also kind of helped out. Opponents' third down percentage, 50%. So half the time, opponents were converting on third downs. But as opponents got closer and closer, opponents' fourth downs, a little bit less than that, and then opponents' red zones, a little bit less than that. So they were able to get into these positions where they were able to kind of, again, bend but kind of break here. 45.8% on fourth down conversions and 75.3% in red zone percentages. So again, once those teams started getting into the red zone, they would score. Sometimes they wouldn't. 3/4 of the time they would. 1 out of those 4 times, they wouldn't. On to the other side, though, field goals, and this is what kept them in there. It's not a stat. They didn't really have stats for it last year, but deuces. We'll talk about that in a second as well when we get to the departures. Deuces really helped Quad City. Field goals did too. 18 of 36 for 50%, and I believe, looking at the stats before I started this, they attempted more field goals than any team in the league at 36, and they had one of the highest make percentages at 50%. Some teams were better, but they didn't attempt 36 field goals. So the accuracy was there, but for all intents and purposes, 36 field goal attempts, yeah, that's more than 2 field goal attempts per game. So they trusted Kyle Kaplan quite a bit. PATs, again, something that I've harped on a little bit for some teams where it's kind of free money. 85.7, so they missed a couple, but for the most part, hitting over 85%, it's pretty good. You don't want to get below 80 really, or into the 70s, and some of these teams that we've already talked about have kind of gotten into that range. So not bad. You're not going to make every single one, especially with the narrow goalposts. That's what we have. Kickoff returns, 16.1, which again is one of the higher ones in the league. You were able to return the kick if it wasn't, out of the back of the end zone for a touchback and wasn't a deuce or anything. So they actually were returning kicks pretty well. However, on the flip side, they only blocked 2 kicks. So they didn't really get to it. But again, you wonder how many field goals did they go up against? How many opportunities did they have to kick field goals? Because they were kind of bend but don't break. So top individual returners. So these are players. I always screw that up. These are players that were signed on from last season that are signed on for this season, including quarterback DeQuan Neal, running back Jared Ware Jr., wide receivers Jordan Vesey and Kevon Rudd, offensive lineman Joel Crowell, defensive lineman Keyshawn Moore and Chimadunga, no linebacker to speak of, and defensive backs Malik Duncan, Nicholas Harris, Trey Smith, and Cameron Harrell, with no kicker. Now, that's pretty much the entire secondary minus Chris Chukwuemeka, who's over at Jacksonville, so it's insane how they've re-signed their entire secondary. And last but not least, representing the Steamwheelers head coach, Corey Ross, who we talked about earlier, brand new signee, Kean Williams from Iowa, first team All-Indoor Football League. Oh, yeah. We'll talk about him in a second. And then finally, defensive lineman Keyshawn Moore. Again, another first-team All-IFL selection for the Steamwheelers. With that, we have to go talk about that roster, baby. Talk about that. Key departures, key signings. You know the drill. Let's go. All right, we need to talk about the Quad City roster. And you look here, first and foremost, with Kean Williams, move that Iowa Barnstormers tab a little bit over. I screwed that up. But anyway, this team looks like they're all in. And you can tell by the amount of players that they have re-signed from last season to this season, which means they've seen something good. You can see players that they've brought over from other teams as well. And they kind of have their pick of the litter at a lot of these positions, a lot of depth to choose from. And they're in training camp right now, so we'll see when the cuts start to happen who's going to be the guys that start for this team. Starting at quarterback, DeQuan Neal and Judd Roberts. There's only two on the roster, so most likely those are the two guys that are going to be going through camp as your starter and backup. DeQuan Neal coming over from Bay Area a couple of seasons ago. He is a veteran of the game, a big veteran of the game, and it's been kind of a breath of fresh air after the E.J. Hilliard years, and then you had the 1 year with Judd Erickson and Mike Irwin, which was a back-and-forth affair that was not fun. All intents and purposes, not fun. But backing up, DeQuan Neal will be Judd Roberts, which DeQuan Neal did get hurt for a game or two last season, so Judd Roberts might need to get into the game. He was 6'4", 220 pounds, and at one point, DeQuan Neal did get out of the game against Tulsa at the end of the season, and Seth Morgan did take over as the playoffs were already clinched. So it's not like DeQuan Neal, I'm not saying he's going to get hurt or that he's old or whatever, but, you do like that backup position there with Judd Roberts. Moving over to the running back spot, Jared Ware Jr. is re-signed on for another year. Former Northern Arizona Wrangler comes over to Quad City. He's been there for 2 years now. Kean Mosey, we talked about him in an off-season update from Miami of Ohio, where his brother and dad play at Nebraska, so go Big Red there. And I've heard he is a very, very good running back, a speedster. We'll see how that translates, because if I'm hearing good things about this guy, I want to see him play. Last but not least, Trenton Barnes, 6'1", 205 from Coe College. And if that name rings, well, not name, but if the college rings a bell, Coe College is where Fred Jackson played, the former Buffalo Bill, and he actually was in the Indoor Football League. He is part of the Indoor Football League Hall of Fame, so maybe there's another Coe College player that can make the ranks to the NFL. Here's hoping for Trenton Barnes at least. Moving on to the wide receivers, Jordan Vesey is signed on for another year, along with Kevon Rudd, and then in we go. Kean Williams is signed as of just a couple days ago, adding more firepower, which made me have to change one of my three questions, because one of my three questions was going to be, who's wide receiver number 2? Who's going to be wide receiver number 1 now? VC or Williams? Take your pick, man. But after Kean Williams, who is just Triple Crown winner, all Indoor Football League selection, you do move to Jazarick Peterson. He's been around for quite a while. Green Bay last season. I believe he's been with Tucson, Arizona, Bay Area. He's been with a couple of teams throughout. He's a veteran of the game too. He's also a really big return threat. So I can't remember if he actually returned a kickoff for a touchdown for Green Bay last season. I cannot honestly remember. I think he did. It might have been against Quad City for all intents and purposes, but we do know Jazarick Peterson still has some left in the tank. Rounding it out, Anthony Evelyn, Jalal Dean, Marquis Whitlock, Ricky Weber, Todd Simmons Jr., and Trenton Perry, which I believe all of those guys are rookies except for Todd Simmons, who has infamously made a name for himself being a part of a whole bunch of signings, most recently with San Antonio. Name a team that he has not tried to play for, not just in the Indoor Football League, but for a bunch of other teams. I think he was with the Arlington or Dallas Renegades in the UFL at one point, because I remember seeing his photo with that. I know we talked about it on Shady Sports with Around the Indoor Football World. It's name a place he hasn't been, man. So seeing him signed on here, you kind of think about, okay, what are we doing? But he does have size. So does Weber, though. 6'4", 225 for Weber, and 6'2", 185 for Simmons. So you can't sit there and say that there's not size there for Quad City, but hopefully there's a lot of speed that can transition with that too. Here's a question mark that I have, though. It's the offensive line. Javion Caldwell is re-signed for another season, along with Joe Crowell. Caldwell played kind of a split season between Quad City and Tucson. Crowell played the entire year. But who's going to be that third guy? There's no Ivory Scott. There's no Tyrone Chambers, because I think he's over at Iowa. But you've got Brandon Unangst, if that's how it's pronounced, Justin Nelson, and Lionel Whittingham. What you can say about these players, though, is they have size. Everyone's 6'4" or above. Everyone except Nelson starting with a 3. So a lot of size here, especially with Unangst, 6'7", 320 pounds. Whittingham, 6'4", 320, and Nelson, 6'4", 290. So 10 pounds make a difference, 20 pounds make a difference, who knows? But for the most part, I say it with all the other previews, I'll say it with this one, size doesn't necessarily equal talent, but for the most part, you're going to have one of these guys be the starter, and maybe the other 2 guys be either your depth pieces, one stick around on the roster, one get cut. We'll see how it kind of goes with that. But for the most part, you probably have 2 spots locked up. We'll see who gets that third one. You got to be able to protect the quarterback with that, so we'll see how it goes. Defensive line, before we move to the linebacker. Defensive line, Keyshawn Moore is signed on for another year. Chemadunga is signed on for another year. And added to that, Rashawn Williams comes over from Tulsa and Green Bay. He split the season between the 2 last year. And DeJour Davenport is signed on. He, I believe, is a former Northern Arizona Wrangler, playing with them just a couple seasons ago. I want to say 2024 or maybe 2023. But he is signed on for another year as well. And then finally, David Abelarinwa. I think that's how it is. There we go. Abelarinwa. 6'3", 250 out of Concord. And what we see here is a lot of big bubbas up front. 290 for Moore, 305 for Dunga, 305 for Rashawn Williams. So what I'm gathering here is you're going to get some guys that really want to bull rush you up front. And with Davenport and Abelarinwa, I think I got it that time too. 250 on the edges. You might be seeing some speed on the edges of Davenport and Abelarinwa are able to make it worth their salt. So we'll see how all of that goes. But for the most part, that defensive line looks shorn up. You do have a lot of veteran talent right there. Will it translate? Of course, we don't know yet. Linebacker position, Alex Harriet and Dace. I'm going to call it Dace unless it's Dace or Dossie or however it's spelled. I'm going to call it Dace. Dace Francis, 6'1", 225 out of Iowa Central. And Alex Harriet, 5'10", 215 out of Presbyterian. This is going to be a big one. Hint foreshadowing. Replacing Bubba Arslanian at the linebacker position. We'll see how it goes. Ultimately, we'll see how it goes. I have heard a little rumor that one of the defensive backs could switch to linebacker. We'll see how it goes. We don't really know, but I don't want to take anything away from the linebackers that they have onto the roster right now, so I won't even put that I won't put that thought out here. We'll see if Harriet or Francis can win that starting job before you even think about moving anyone in the secondary down, but that's how we have it. Defensive secondary, and this is hopefully as much as the yards that they gave up last year, hopefully this is something that they can really tamper down here. Cameron Harrell, Malik Duncan, Nicholas Harris, and Trey Smith are all signed on for another season. Kevin Ransom II comes over from Green Bay and added to it Amir Wallace, David Stevens, Caleb Coleman, Richie Murphy, and Jordan Tate. I am really interested in that size of Jordan Tate, 6'4", 202 pounds out of UCM, Central Missouri, go MIAA. Is it enough to break for any of these guys? Wallace, Stevens, Williams, Coleman, Murphy, is it enough to break through those 4? Those 5, actually, because you forget Kevin Ransom's there. So who's going to start? I mean, Cameron Harrell looked really good. Nicholas Harris looked really good. Trey Smith looked really good. And Malik Duncan, he is that man that will jam you at the offensive, or the line of scrimmage, the offensive line of scrimmage. He is that man that will run up you and jam that motion, man. He does a damn good job at it, too. And then you've got, like I said, ball hawks with Harris Smith and Harrell. We'll see how it goes. Like I said, they gave up a lot of yards, but a lot of bend but kind of break defense. Ransom's there to kind of tamp it down as well. We'll see how everything goes. I don't know how many of those rookies will necessarily have a chance if that is as loaded of a secondary as you have. But stranger things have happened. I'm just basing it off, obviously, prior experience, prior talent. But a lot of that remains to be seen. Like I said, as they're going through camp right now. I know I shouted him out in an offseason update, but Richie Murphy doing his social media stuff. He hasn't actually popped up on my Facebook, so if he's still posting that stuff, more credit to you, man. Keep doing what you're doing. Hopefully there's a spot for you on that roster if that is the case. Last but not least, we talked about him too. Jan Bogdan out of Syracuse, 6', 180. He is your kicker. Kyle Kaplan is not back, so that's going to be a big thing, and we'll talk about that in 1 second. But Can we get a kicker that is as accurate as Kaplan was, not just with field goals, extra points, but with the deuces as well? Bogdan's got some shoes to fill. Moving over to the injury call-up and other list, Jarius Burnett is suspended as he is over to a different league. Jacob Daniels and Darian Jackson have refused to report, and Khalil McLean was traded over to the Jacksonville Sharks. He's been activated from IR, but just like other guys we've talked about, activated does not mean you are signed. See how it goes, but I haven't seen anything that says he is signed, he is released or anything, so if he is fully released, he's not part of the roster, which as a wide receiver at 6'5", 230, that's some nice size, but there's a lot of depth right there already at the wide receiver position. We'll see how it goes. But there is your 2026 Quad City Steamwheeler roster before they start making their cuts, and they kick off here in about 12 days. Let's go take a look at our key signings and our key departures, our schedule, our questions. We get out of here. All right, we need to talk key signings, key departures, and offensively for the key signing or re-signing, I could have put Kean Williams here, but two things. One, I do think that DeQuan Neal is probably a little bit more of your target. B, I've already made this graphic and didn't want to type up all of Kean Williams' stats and everything because he has a bunch. But make it be known, he is a huge, huge signing for that. But we do need to talk about DeQuan Neal. He is re-signed for another year. We've already talked about that. He is 2019's Indoor Football League MVP. 2022 second team all indoor football league selection, and 2019 first team all indoor football league selection. Last year the guy went 166, my throat is still bad, 166 of 270, 2,154 passing yards, 47 touchdowns, and 9 interceptions. To add along to that, 138 rushing attempts, 725 rushing yards, and 23 rushing touchdowns. So overall 70 total touchdowns for the guy last year. I want to say he missed 2 games due to injury, so had a chance to kind of move up the stats and stuff like that, but hurt for 2 games. What can you do? Like I said, I think Kean Williams is going to be kind of the focal point when you look at the skill positions, but I think the offense goes around DeQuan Neal, and that is something that I have had issue with back in the day with EJ Hilliard, and I don't want that to be the case here. I do think that DeQuan Neal is going to be a focal point, but with what we just talked about with the roster, I love this re-signing, but I think there is a lot of talent around DeQuan Neal this year where he does not need to be the focal point. We'll see if that changes, because ultimately, sorry, my camera's doing that thing again. We'll see what goes on, because you have Kean Williams, you have Jordan Vesey, you have Kevon Rudd, and Jazarick Peterson. All the rookies that we haven't mentioned. You have Kean Mosey, you have Jared Ware, you have Trenton Barnes. Like, there's a lot of talent at these skill positions. I don't think DeQuan Neal needs to go and play YOLO ball with it. I'm not saying he has, I'm not saying he hasn't, but at the same time, I think this offense can very, very, very balance itself out at this point. And DeQuan Neal doesn't need to be a game manager, but just needs to be able to do what he needs to do, get the ball out to the guys, run the ball when he needs to. If he still produces those stats, it shows that the offense is clicking on all cylinders. So, for all intents and purposes, you could put quite a few people here for a key signing on offense. I'm going with DeQuan Neal, but I do think the offensive line, too, you got to give a shout out to Joe Crowell as well. I know you don't really have any stats, but he's going to be one of the guys protecting him, too, so he is also a very big key signing with that. Over to the defensive side of the ball, Keyshawn Moore, defensive lineman, coming back for another year. He's lit it up in the last couple of seasons. First team all indoor football selection last season, and in 2024, second team all indoor football selection, and the all rookie team as well. Last year, 72 total tackles, 19 tackles for a loss, 9 sacks, 5 pass breakups, 4 forced fumbles, 1 fumble recovery. He's doing this at the defensive line position, so he's getting his hands up and batting down passes 5 times, and he's able to force 4 fumbles from that defensive line position, along with getting to the quarterback 9 times. 10 of those have been tackles for loss other than getting to the quarterback. It's insane how good this guy has gone, and I'm excited to have him back for another year. You look at what the defensive line talent has. We talked about that. Is this a year? I'm not going to say he's going to break out because I feel like he's already done that. Is this a year where you take it to another stratosphere, man? Is this a year where the defense clicks? You've got the guys in the secondary. We'll figure out linebacker. That defensive line looks nasty, like we said in the very beginning. Is this a year where Quad City goes all in? It looks like it. Talking key departures, though, offensively, Kyle Kaplan, we touched on this. 2025 and 2024 second team all indoor football selection. 84 of 97 extra point percentage, 87%. 18 of 36 for 50% on field goals. And I didn't mention this in the team info portion, but again, 36 field goal attempts. Sometimes you're asking them, as always, you're asking them 50, 60 yards, kind of flip the field, glorified punts and stuff like that. So still 36 field goal attempts. That's over 2 per game roughly. It's insane that you were just trotting them out there going, here you go. And half the time he'd make them. There you go. And I looked at this as best as I can. 22 deuces. I had to go through all of their games and look up where it said, team safety, Kyle Kaplan, team safety, 2 points, whatever. I counted 22. So that's as accurate as I could find it. It might not be accurate, so take that with a grain of salt. But from what I could gather in these games, he hit 22 deuces. Because I know for a fact there was one game where he hit like four in one game. Like back to back to back to back. After each touchdown, he was hitting a deuce. I think it was either against Tulsa where I was at that game, or maybe it was the game before that. I can't remember, but 22, that's incredible. That's why he's a departure here. How do you get those points? How do you make 18 field goals? How accurate are you on those extra points? Like I said, Bogdan has some shoes to fill, and his longest kick of 46 yards. So he was drilling him, man. He was very, very good just last season and the season before that. Lest we forget the walk-off field goal winner against Iowa, where they put him on their shoulders. I mean, it's gonna suck not having him there, but at the same time, he's leaving a damn legend for all intents and purposes. But it sucks not to have him. Hopefully Bogdan gets the same treatment. I'm hoping so. Defensively, Bubba Arslanian, we've touched on this a couple of times. 2025 first team all indoor football league, 125 total tackles. I think that's the most of any player. Now, don't quote me on that because they wipe the stats sheet and everything, but it's up there. If it's not top 1, it's like top 5, and I don't think he's 5'4", 3'2". 7 tackles for a loss, 1.5 sacks, 4 picks, 3 pass breakups, 2 fumble recoveries, and a partridge in a pear tree. This guy was all over the place. And mind you, in 2024, I think he only joined Quad City for like the final less than half the season. So he did this in like a full season, and then half a season. He's barely played in the indoor football league, and he's able to accomplish that. It's going to be some big shoes to fill, man. Now again, as we've said with a lot of previews, rosters are fluid. These guys could get re-signed. There's an opportunity. There's guys that can get cut, what have you. So it's not out of the realm of possibilities, but we're treating it like these guys are not coming back as of right now. So it's like I said in the roster thing, how do you replace this? We'll figure it out. But losing 2 of those guys with all indoor football selections, it's a brutal hit. But what you've brought in can be just as good. So let's go take a look at the schedule. We got some questions to wrap up and get out of here. All right, we need to talk schedule. And what we have here, kicking it off, the 2026 Indoor Football League season. We talked about it in the Fishers preview. We'll talk about it here for the Quad City one because that's who they play. Fishers on the road, 5 p.m. Eastern Time kickoff, Saturday, March 14th. I think Yahoo Sports is carrying this one, although I don't think they've made it public, or they might have, but it might have been in like one of those, paragraphs a couple down that maybe you just skimmed over. But I'm pretty sure Yahoo Sports is going to be here. All the gang, all the crew for the maiden voyage. Let's see how it goes. A week after that, the 21st of March, 6 p.m. Eastern Time kickoff. The Iowa Barnstormers renew their rivalry with the Quad City Steamwheelers. I will be at this game. I am excited for it. I hope to see any Quad City fans there, and we'll just have a rambunctious time. So I am looking forward to it. I'm not looking forward to making the drive up there, 5.5 hours, but still, I am ready to watch Kean Williams take on his former team in the second game of the season. 2 weeks off after that. They do have a bye week, but 2 weeks off. And then on the 5th of April, they are traveling to Orlando to take on the Orlando Pirates. We just did their preview before this one, so 4 p.m. Eastern Time kickoff for them, and just a rare Sunday kickoff for Quad City. As you look at their schedule, it's mainly Orlando that they play on Sundays, but this one 4 p.m. on the 5th of April on the road before a short week. On the 11th of April, they are home against Green Bay with an 8 p.m. Eastern Time kickoff, and then another short week. You play San Diego at 10 p.m. Eastern Time, one of just a couple Western Conference foes. Quad City in the last couple of years hasn't played a lot of Western Conference foes, but here they play, what, 3 of them? Yeah, I think they play 3 of them. So increasing the amount of times they either travel out west or Western teams go out to Quad City. This time they're traveling all the way to San Diego. I think they've done it before. 10 p.m. Eastern Time kickoff on a Friday. Now, after that, you get a little bit of a longer week before you're back home. 4 p.m. Eastern Time kickoff on the 26th of April, taking on the Jackson Sharks and renewing that rivalry with them. But it's weird because the amount of, 3 teams that you play, 1 teams you play, they only play Jacksonville 1 time, which sucks because I would love a home and home with the Sharks, but unfortunately, they only play them once. Short week after that, on the 2nd of May, you are at Iowa this time. Excuse me. As that is the second game of a 3-game series. I'm starting to lose my voice. 6 p.m. Eastern Time kickoff. I am going to power through this. 6 p.m. Eastern Time kickoff for the Barnstormers and the Steamwheelers on the 2nd of May. Short week after that, on the 8th of May, 8 p.m. Eastern Time kickoff. Second of 3 games against Green Bay. And again, another Friday game, and then you go back-to-back Friday games. This time you're back at home, though. 8 p.m. Eastern Time kickoff against the Tucson Sugar Skulls. So there's your second Western Conference team before you venture to your third Western Conference team on the 30th of May after a bye week. 9 p.m. Eastern Time kickoff. You are at the Vegas Nighthawks. So, Coach Davis is going to figure out how to lose because Quad City is going to win, just like they'll win the 15 other games on the schedule, but I digress. Because after that Vegas game, they are back home, the final game series for Green Bay, 8 p.m. kickoff, 8 p.m. Eastern Time kickoff on June 6th. And then a week after that, they take on Iowa to close out that 3-game series, 8 p.m. Eastern Time kickoff, but they are at the Barnstormers as you're alternating home and aways at this point. On the 28th of June. So you have a bye week after the Iowa game, which is practically 2 weeks off after that. Another Sunday game on the 28th, 4 p.m. Eastern Time kickoff again. This time, instead of being at Orlando, you are home against Orlando to close that out. And then, excuse me, again, I'm sorry about my voice. After that, you have roughly a little less than 2 weeks, but even some more time off. On the 11th of July, it's a bye week. It's the Fisher's Freight. My goodness, if my words can go, because my throat is going out. 8 p.m. Eastern Time kickoff on the 11th of July, home against Fishers to round that out. And then weird schedule quirk. I'm not a fan of this, just like I'm not a fan of when we talked like Fishers going back-to-back against Jacksonville and vice versa. You finish the season at Tulsa and then home against Tulsa. At Tulsa on the 18th of July, 8 p.m. Eastern Time kickoff, and then your final game at home, the 25th of July, you're home against Tulsa, who they closed the season out with last year, 6 p.m. Eastern Time kickoff. Like I said, it's just a weird schedule quirk that's what the arena availability and everything was, so that's what we make it. Like I said, not necessarily a fan of it, but, that's where you have it. 3 weeks to finish it out. 2 of those games are at home. Schedule should benefit Quad City down the stretches. 3 of your final 4 games are at home, and you do have 2 bye weeks scheduled in with all of that too. So, for all intents and purposes, it's not a bad schedule, all things considered. You get a couple of home games to start the season, you get quite a few home games and some bye weeks towards the end to maybe make that playoff push, maybe get a little bit healthy before you do that 3 of 4 at home stretch. Simple as that. So that's where we have the Quad City Steamwheelers schedule. We got 3 questions we need to talk about. Let's go take a look at those. We'll get out of here. All right. 3 questions. Again, whole spiel. Just 3 open-ended questions. If you want to answer them in the comments, you're more than free to. Again, sorry about the camera, my voice and everything like that. I'm getting sick at the worst possible time, but we trudge on. 3 open-ended questions. If you want to comment, you can. If you don't, you don't have to. No one's pressuring you. It's not a test. But I do have some questions, as I've mentioned in previous previews, that I kind of just have thought about between the end of the season last year and the start of kind of the previews and stuff like that to kind of get some engagement going and think about what this team is going to be capable of, what other teams are going to be capable of, so on and so forth. So, question number 1 for the Quad City Steamwheelers is Quad City all in for 2026? And all indications are yes. I mean, it's a stupid question, but it's not, in the sense of you want every team in the league to be in. And you're not going to hear from any coach or any owner or any player or anything going like, well, what are your expectations? And them going, well, I hope we compete. No, every answer is going to be, we want to win. We want to win the championship. We want to raise banners. We want to do this and that. So is Quad City all in? Yes. But to dive in even a step further, the talent that they have acquired, the players that they have brought in, players that they've re-signed, and even some of the players that they've let go. I wouldn't necessarily say a lot of them are addition by subtraction, but some can be. Quad City is going to make a run at this. And as I said, in almost every other Eastern Conference preview team that we've done, I do think that the East is very wide open. You don't need to hear me keep beating a dead horse with that, because I still think it's true. Every preview that we've done, I try and sit there and go, can this team make the playoffs? Can this team make the playoffs? Quad City has just as good of a shot right now as Jacksonville, Orlando, Iowa, Fishers, whoever, Green Bay, whoever. We still have Tulsa to do as well. This is a different Quad City team. And what I mean by that is this team looks hungry to me. And those are things in previous seasons that I wouldn't be like, well, as long as this team can compete and, if they do get some breaks in their schedule and stuff, I think this team is trying to be aggressive this year, which is something that like I said, I can't necessarily say for previous iterations of Quad City. You're just hoping, hey, I hope this team can win this game, and maybe if they get on a little bit of a run. And as you saw in the team info stuff, they've gone 500 until last year when they went 11-5, and then when they went to the championship and lost, they went 9-7, which is right around 500. Yes, it's a winning record, but just one game over. So to actually see the team break out and go 11-5, I'm not saying this team's going to go 11-5. I'm not saying this team's going to go 16-0, even though they will. This team looks hungry. This team looks aggressive. So do a lot of other teams in the East, though. That's where it gets a little tricky. I'm trying to put bias aside as much as I can here. I think Quad City looks very, very determined to not just make it back to the playoffs, but being as close as they were last year to make the Indoor Football League National Championship game, going up against Green Bay. Yes, the game wasn't necessarily close. They made it close, but Green Bay, for all intents and purposes, had that game. And while that sucks to admit and hear, I think I think Quad City is looking at that going, we're not going to lick our wounds and tuck our tail. We're going to attack. At least that's the way I'm looking at it. So I think they're all in, but more than just your typical, yeah, we want to win titles. Question number 2, who starts at linebacker? Something I raised earlier. Like I said, I heard a rumor. I'm not going to treat it as fact, but I heard a rumor that, if the linebacker guys don't work out, there's someone in the secondary or like players in the secondary that could move up. Excuse me. We know that, excuse me, my goodness, I do apologize. Like I told you, I am getting sick and it sucks. We've seen Orlando, Massachusetts, use this before. I think, like I mentioned there, Marquise Waters was kind of your tweener. He would be in the secondary for some. He would be at the linebacker position for others. And I do think that there were times where I think it was Jaden Woodby was another one of those guys that would be at linebacker, and then he'd transition into the secondary whenever they got their linebacker back from injury or whatever the case could be. So it's not unheard of in the Indoor Football League if you have a guy from the secondary move up to that linebacker spot. Maybe they want to do that for speed. I'm not sure. Like I said, if it's any of those rookies, whether it's Harriet or Dace, I can't remember your last name. I closed out the roster tab. Sorry, guys. But whoever it is, you have big shoes to fill. Just like the kicker position, which that's not one of the questions, but you got some big shoes to fill there at linebacker and kicker. And then you also have big shoes to fill for question number 3. Is the offensive line good enough? This is a big one. Like I mentioned in the roster segment, you do have Javion Caldwell, Joe Crowell, who's going to take that final spot. And is it going to be enough? Is it going to be a rotating cast of players? Because Quad City, for all intents and purposes, had a pretty good offensive line, and they rotated a couple of guys, but not necessarily like your top 3 for 16 straight games. I don't think any team had all 3 offensive linemen for 16 straight games. There were a couple that were close, but for all intents and purposes, I don't think anyone had it for 16 straight. So is the offensive line good enough? I think you do have 2 stalwarts, but I am curious and intrigued to see who that final one's going to be. Now, again, I don't grind film. I don't watch highlights of high school and college and stuff like that. So whoever it is, I'll take a wait and see approach and see how it goes, because some of these guys have been in other indoor and arena leagues. Fine and dandy. We'll see how it transitions from there. So taking a look at those 3 questions, I think Quad City is all in. So this question 1 is Quad City all in. Number 2, who starts at linebacker? And number 3, is the offensive line good enough? For all intents and purposes, yes. I do think to all of that, they are all in. They're hungry. Their offensive line should look good enough. Is it enough to keep DeQuan Neal upright? I think so. If not, they do have enough skill positions to get the ball out quickly or to run the ball, whatever they need to do. And then who starts on linebacker? I don't know. We'll figure it out once the roster cuts and everything start to happen. But like I said, I'm not going to diminish any guys and everything that's going on right now. So hopefully a good camp is had by all. But those are your 3 questions. Let's wrap up and get out of here. And that is it for your 2026 Indoor Football League National Champions, the Quad City Steamwheelers. I'm kidding. No, this will be a fun season. Like, I am really interested to see how Quad City plays compared to the other teams that they're playing against. Because I will be brutally honest with you, you can call it a casual, you can do whatever, but my whole entire mantra since I've started this channel is to be as impartial as I can, even for the teams that I root for and stuff like that. And that's starting to go out the window because that's how hyped I am for Quad City's season. And I'm trying my best to keep the bias away. But the more I look at this roster, the more I look at this team, the more I'm just like, yeah, I'm going to be watching their games maybe more than once compared to some of the other teams and stuff like that. So like I said, I'm really trying to keep that bias out. I know it's snuck up quite a bit in this one since it's the team I root for, so I do apologize for that. I really do. But I am really excited for what Quad City can bring to the table this year. There's a lot of intrigue, and a lot of intrigue just in the Eastern Conference alone. Because like I said, Quad City drops a couple of games against Vegas or San Diego, and it's like, okay, that's bad, but you still have the rest of the Eastern Conference to go through. And if you can maintain those games, we still don't know what the tiebreakers are going to be. It might be in the rule book that just got released, but we'll figure it out, man. I am really interested to see how this team takes on a team like Fishers, a team like Jacksonville, a team like Green Bay, a team like Iowa. I mean, I'm really excited to see what Quad City is capable of, because if this is true and they are all in and they want to raise that banner, now's as good a time as any. East is wide open. You can shut that door pretty quick. But you've got a lot of teams to go through, and they also have a say in it. It's not just a one-sided affair. So I really want to see how Quad City handles it, especially since they kick off the season. So it'll be a litmus test. You'll either get the memes for good or the memes for bad, depending on how that game goes against Fishers on March 14th. But that's where we have it for Quad City. And I think I'm going to call it there, because like I said, my throat is shot. I can't stop coughing. And in between takes that I have for all of this stuff, I am chugging NyQuil. And it's been a fun day. Quick side note, little personal stuff. I am 33 years old today, so happy birthday to me. It's March 2nd, and yeah, I've never felt older being sick and applying for AARP at 33, but here we are. I'm kidding. It's been a fun day, so appreciate everyone, Quad City fans and those alike, that have wished me happy birthday. I do appreciate it. Just some weird poetic justice that I was able to do my favorite team on my birthday for the preview, so that's pretty awesome. But it's been a fun day, all things considered. So thank you guys, the indoor football community that has welcomed me in open arms, wishing me happy birthday. The ones of you that have, if you want to, fine, I don't care. Like I said, if you want to like, comment, share, subscribe, you can do that too. I don't care. But I'm just happy to make this stuff, man. I'm happy to make these videos. I'm happy to talk amongst you guys and get this stuff out and have all my old takes exposed whenever these are wrong. It's fine. But yeah, so I'm going to take off here, guys. I love and appreciate you so much. I'm going to try and trudge through these next 5 team previews when I get the opportunity to, when my throat doesn't suck. So with that being said, I think I've said it multiple times. I'm taking off here, guys. I love you. Again, if you want to like, comment, share, subscribe, cool. You don't, cool. Whatever. But until then, I will catch you. San Antonio, you are up next. 5 left. Let's get into it. And then we got a week before the season starts. Let's go. See ya.